Hey, welcome back. So this is really exciting part of the build now. We're actually going to get to do something artistic with this guitar for Phil. Originally, Phil was intending to have a trans white tint applied to the top of this guitar, which is still going to be the case. However, we are looking to accentuate the grain a little bit, so we're going to do what the Americans call popping the grain. A process of adding a base colour, sanding it back and reapplying the finished colour, if you like, just so that the grain pattern really pops out through. So we'll have a little look at how we're going to do that, which is always great. I love this bit. So here's kind of a mock-up of what the guitar is going to look like. Most of these components aren't actually Phil's. Let's disassemble it, and just the pickups are a couple of generic pickups I've just put in there to give me a little bit of an eyeball on it and show me how things are progressing. So let's disassemble. That's a nice tight neck joint, is that? Happy days. Let's disassemble this. So that is Phil's bridge. Go to 510, beautiful. Got the knobs. They're Phil's as well. There is going to be a three-way spade style selector switch in here, but I haven't actually put it in as yet. I'll do that at a later date. The scratch plate I've made from Coca-Cola is actually two pieces of book matched rosewood, and as with everything else, I've used the template to create the actual scratch plate itself, and then as opposed to the recess which would be there to house the standard hardtail Telecaster bridge, I actually offered the template into its position, and then with a bearing router I just carved out the, this is going to be a laugh, let's get that out in a second. There we go. So yes, with a bearing router, scratch plate in situ, I just attached it down with some sticky tape, double-sided sticky tape, and routed out the relief of the actual pickup cavity, so that fits nicely. Will look nice and flush and tidy by the time we've connected it. The edges of this probably will end up being a little bit rounded, but again, until we see it in place, we're not quite sure how that's going to pan out. So work in progress. Superb. So you can probably already see the grain pattern on the top of the guitar, and indeed, if we just apply the trans white tint that we're going to use, a lot of that grain pattern, is my suspicion, would probably disappear, or at least not be as prevalent as it could be. So we're going to pop the grain with a brownish tint first off, sand it off, and then reapply the white after. Incidentally, as well as that figuration, I've also taken the time to get some, probably can't see it, but some lacquer, acrylic lacquer, and I've just painted the outside of the binding with some acrylic lacquer and sealed that in. So when the stain is taken, the outside edge will actually remain slightly darker than the top, which will create a faux binding, as it's known. So it'll look like binding's applied, but in fact it's just the edge of the wooden top. But the top is so beautifully flamed that will be a nice little addition to the finished product. So we're going to make sure that it's beautifully sanded down before we start, so there's no scratches, because as you apply stain to wood, if there's scratches, it will let you know they're there, so it'll actually enhance the scratch. So we've got to make sure that first this is sanded to within an inch of its life. So we'll do that and then get back to you with the next step. Right then, let's get experimental. So I've got some stain here. This is as I always use, and I don't mind advertising other luthiers' work, especially when they're as respected as these individuals. These are stunning stains from Crimson Guitars. Again, I know it'll probably take you away from my site and into theirs, but do check them out, because I've nothing but respect for Mr. Crow and his work. His stains are indeed stunning. So at the moment, I've obviously got the scratch plate, which is giving me a kind of browny, slightly purple look, and I'm just going to try and not so much colour match it, but I'm going to get something that seems to sit alongside it. Again, mindful of the fact that once the white stain has been applied, it is going to mute down, but I want to try and pick out a little bit of that almost mauve look, but without going classic purple. So at the moment, just as a precursor, I've just mixed a little bit of amber with a tiny little bit of cherry red. I'm just going to see what that looks like on a tester, and we'll progressively work up until we get something that we kind of like the look of. Now, are you picking that up? No, let's move it over so you can see. So to my eye, that is looking very brown. So we're going to add a little bit of something a bit darker. I might even put a tiny little bit of purple in there as well. So yeah, let's put a tiny little bit of purple in as well. This is the stain that I used on Purple Rain, the guitar that you may have seen on the channel. Incidentally, Purple Rain is called Purple Rain because I stained it purple and then went back down to the house from the workshop and discovered that Prince had just died, so it seemed apt to call it Purple Rain. So that's why it's called Purple Rain. I didn't make it for Prince, unfortunately. Okay, so yes, that's looking a lot more like it. Now if you look into the actual figuration of that, you can see the little stripes appearing. That's where end grain pops through and soaks up more stain than the kind of transverse or longitudinal grain. So that is actually looking pretty darn good. Yes, maybe a hint more red. As with all things, you've got to find your position and say that'll do, and not be tempted to overdo it. Something I used to do when I was a fine artist. That's a bit of an overstatement as well, but I used to do some oil painting, and I get a painting to a point and then put one more brush stroke on and completely ruin it. So knowing when to stop is the biggest challenge and the key to it. So again, I'm looking for the figuration points as opposed to the overall colour. It's those kind of darker bits that you can see that I'm kind of looking at to try and achieve what I'm after. Yeah, maybe see, I still haven't learnt. I'm still adding more and more bit of purple. Alright, this is going to be it. You can always darken it up once it's been done. Very difficult to make it lighter again, but yeah, I've done it again. Amber brown. It's a little bit too garish, that. Yep, that'll do me. Happy days. Right then. Now this, if Phil's watching this bit, we'll probably make him fall off his chair, because this is going to look absolutely horrendous and make it look like I'm making a 1980s heavy metal pointy headstock guitar, which is exactly what he doesn't want. But have faith, Mr. Short, it will all be alright on the night. So we've got a faux binding that's been technically masked off with the lacquer that I put on it, and I'm just going to massage this here stain in, and I'm going to try and obviously brush over the edges and stop it from running down the sides. That would be bad. There shouldn't really be any need to mask it, because I'm only going to apply it very gently. Right then, here goes nothing. already you will start to see. I do so love this bit. Love this bit. You'll see the figuration start to pop. Obviously we're going to try and get it consistent all the way over the body, although obviously it is going to be sanded back, so it's not hellishly important, but there we go. This is probably where the video starts getting boring, and I'll cut lumps out or fast forward it or something like that. How gorgeous is that? And the great thing about this is once it's dried, if you don't like it, you can add washes of colour over the top until you get the desired effect. I bet Phil's shouting at the screen now. No, I wanted a white guitar. Elegant. Elegant and understated. You've made me a chocolate nonsense. Look at that flame. We were planning not to put a scratch plate on, and that's the reason why. Why would you want to cover that up with plastic? And that was where I was going. I was kind of erring on the side of not bothering with a scratch plate, but we put the scratch plate on that I made. I kind of said I'd make a scratch plate and then we'd make a decision on whether we were going to use it or not at a later date, and then I put the scratch plate on and I thought, do you know what, I quite like that. So at this stage the plan is to use the scratch plate. There's a good chance that that actually might be slightly too brown. So we might end up putting a little bit of darker tone on there, a little bit more purpley or something. So the stains are waterborne, hence they're not sticking to the lacquered edges, which is exactly what we wanted to happen or not happen, depending on which way you look at it. And I'm just thinking, I'm going to ditch a little bit of this. So I've just ditched most of that brown. I'm going to pop a little bit of purple in there because I do want to darken it up a tiny bit. Under the scratch plate just in case it's a bad idea. No, that's a good idea. That was a good idea. You get some beautiful burst effects by adding colour and sanding. Again, as you may have seen on some of my other videos, check out the tiger. Beautiful, very, very similar kind of grain to this actually, but I use yellows and blacks and oranges. That turned out quite nicely. Wonderful, that's all good. What we need now is a clean rag, and we just blend that off. I like that, you know. You start taking a little bit off, just help it to dry a little bit quicker. Right. I'll tell you what, you could bang a bit of clear coat over that and leave it exactly as it is, and that wouldn't hurt at all. See, I don't know about you, but yeah, I'd just bang a bit of lacquer over that and be done with it. That's looking perfectly acceptable as it is. Happy days. So we'll put that to one side now, and we'll let the flavours get to know each other and let that dry off completely overnight. And then tomorrow we're going to sand it all back, and the only thing that will remain that kind of browny purpley colour will actually be the sort of striations that you can see, the tiger striping, and then we can start applying the white clear coat to it, the white trans coat to it, and yeah, that should look really quite striking. I hope he likes it. I like it. Do you like it? Hey, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and got something from it. And indeed, if you did, then please subscribe to the channel and share, like, and leave some comments perhaps. Feedback is always great to have. So until next time, thanks very much for watching. See you again.